Good evening, everybody. Brian Neubert here from goldenblack.com. Live on the street in New York City, making a jackass of myself as normal, probably not making the best personal security decisions here. I have nowhere to do the rap video in Barclays Center because there's another game going on. I wasn't going to wait it out, so here I am on the street in Brooklyn, right in front of the Barclays Center, here with your rap video following Purdue's 82-72 overtime win over North Carolina State. I hope that was the score. I'm not taking any stuff out here. I'm just talking. So I hope that was a score. Once again, this is your rap video following Purdue's, lots of weed. Purdue's 82-72 win over North Carolina State. This is brought to you by our friends at This is brought to you by our friends at the Purdue Union Club Hotel. Wrong live read. The Purdue Union Club Hotel and the 811 restaurant. Please keep them in mind. Look, the biggest thing about this game is that don't let the outcome of this game obscure all that went into this almost being a really, really ugly sort of loss, and this trip out east for Purdue being a complete wash. Purdue for 35 minutes, 32 minutes, whatever number you want to pick out, wasn't very good, and that's really kind of putting it, I know. Really kind of putting it politely. Purdue has got to do a better job valuing possessions. They have got to take better shots. They've got to cut down the live ball turnovers. They've got to cut down the dead ball turnovers. They got to cut down all the turnovers. I cannot say it enough times that Purdue simply is. I've been saying all season long, Purdue's too good an offensive team to deny itself at bats, things like that. But the way Purdue's played offensively here the last couple of games has really exposed some flaws here. I have no idea, I'm not a psychologist, whether or not, Purdue starting the season literally nuclear from an offensive perspective, if that gave them some sort of invincibility, God complex or whatever from an offensive perspective, and they just figured that they could just roll the ball out and score 80 points against anybody. Obviously that is not the case. But Purdue has been too casual with the ball. They've been too lax at times, from an offensive perspective. And that stuff gets masked when you shoot the ball well. Defensive concerns get masked when you shoot the ball well. 2 games in a row now, Purdue did not shoot the ball well. And it very easily could have gone 0-2 in games it was a heavy favorite in. Who's favored, who's not favored, that doesn't really matter all that much. I mean, college basketball is a really funny game, as you're well aware. But if Purdue wants to be as good as they believe they can be, most people believe they can be, as Purdue has shown they can be, they need to get this stuff under control. They have got to do things with more purpose from a defensive perspective. Purdue has too many guys who are kind of doing their own thing or totally disengaged. From a defensive perspective, it's not constructive or whatever to keep mentioning the same names or whatever, but Purdue's got to make sure that they're defending as a 5-man team and not as a bunch of individuals out there, or fishing for steals or just worrying about getting back on offense, whatever it might be. Purdue's not been a very good offense, or not been a very good defensive team this year, and they're not helping themselves by not playing cohesively, not playing as a unit, not being disciplined, not being focused. All that goes into it. They've got to take this stuff as seriously as they can take it here, because the past 2 games have really exposed them the importance of this stuff in that regard. And Purdue just the last 2 games hasn't been able to shoot their way out of it as they might have been earlier in the season. Purdue's too good a shooting team for this to be some sort of permanent regression. That they will be fine there, but the fact of the matter is, Purdue's not going to win a Big Ten title. Purdue's not going to, go to that Final Four everybody was probably prematurely clamoring about a couple of weeks ago this way from a defensive perspective. They're not going to do those things if they're not, maximizing the value of their possessions, things like that. And that's just if they treat this trip out east like the humbling experience that it certainly seems to have been, if they treat this game like a loss, then they can benefit from this. Like I said, not the best personal security decision. Anyway, positives from this game. Obviously, you have to give Purdue a ton of credit for not rolling over when they're down 13 points in the second half. It looked for a while there that Purdue might not just lose this game, but get blown out of this game. You got to give them a lot of credit for making plays defensively. You got to give Purdue a lot of credit for making timely shots, making timely plays. Eric Hunter, I thought, came up big. Ethan Morton came up big. Mason Gillis came up huge. Travion Williams, again, I wrote in my analysis before that he's, writing a pretty good legacy for himself as one of the more clutch players Purdue's had in its modern history here. Look what he did down the stretch of this game. Look what he did down the stretch at Rutgers. Look what he did down the stretch at North Carolina. He won the Michigan State game for you last year. He damn near beat Ohio State in the Big Ten tournament. He damn near won at Minnesota last year. He's just become a really, really reliable player in the most difficult moments. Give Sasha Stefanovic a lot of credit, shaking off what's happened here the last two games from a shooting perspective. Head on a swivel here. Shaking off what's happened here the last two games from a shooting perspective makes those last two threes, makes that George Gervin finger roll there to tie the game. Just a really clutch performance by him over that span of 2 minutes between the end of regulation and the start of overtime. You have to give Purdue a lot of credit here for showing some heart there at the end when, again, everything was going against them. That 13-point lead, the way that got built for North Carolina State was a total eyesore for Purdue. It was a complete debacle and unadulterated meltdown. They turned the ball over 5 times, over 7 possessions. No bueno. Purdue looked like they were rolling over to get blown out, and then all of a sudden, I can't remember what play started it, Eric Hunter steal or Travion Williams steal. The funny thing about the Travion Williams steals is I don't think Purdue wants him doing that. I don't think they want him fishing for steals, reaching in on guys, because that's how he's picked up so many fouls in his career. But he's made some really productive plays doing that, and as his coach is talking about, just be solid on defense, just be solid on defense. And he's doing that stuff, and it's paying off. Hey, good for Purdue, I guess, but, if that happens and he accidentally, fouls that guy, puts him at the foul line, perhaps this game's entirely different. But when it pays off, everything looks good. Right now, everything Travion Williams touches is turning to gold. Good for him. But this was a game at halftime where Purdue just had to find a way to win and get the hell out of here and call it a day, because every college basketball team has good weeks. Every college basketball team has bad weeks. This was a bad week for Purdue, and they just needed it over. They need to get home. They need to have some introspective moments. They need to be self-aware enough to understand where they are as a team right now relative to where they could be. And they just need to keep getting better. And they need to understand that this is far from a finished product, and the performance of the last 2 games were a considerable step backward. Again, the natural ebbs and flows of a college basketball season, plus the natural unpredictability of young males. But at the same time, Purdue's got to sit back and think long and hard about what happened here out both in New Jersey and New York, and really use this as kind of a watershed moment to really dial in on some of the stuff that's holding them back as a team. I'm saying this about an 8-1 basketball team right now that'll still probably be a top 5 team in the country tomorrow, Monday. So your problems are all relative to your ability. And if we're sitting here complaining about 2 or a 1-1 record when everybody crazy stuff happens to everybody in college basketball, that tells you where Purdue is. But Purdue's standard needs to be higher, because it is capable of being great. And the past 2 games, it was not even remotely great. The last 10 minutes of Iowa, they weren't great. Florida State, I didn't think they played great. Purdue needs to recapture some of the things that kind of shot it out of a cannon to start the season. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to get this bag packed up before somebody hits me over the head and takes it. This computer packed up, I mean. So thanks everybody for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for reading. And thank you for processing our materials, however it is you process our materials. For goldenblack.com, this is Brian Neubert in Brooklyn. Thank you again to the Purdue Union Club Hotel and the 811 restaurant. And God, I'm a professional. Anyway, we'll talk to you guys again Saturday after Purdue plays Butler at the Crossroads Classic. Thanks, everybody.